Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Urban Green Live. This is a program series where I interview experts to better understand how we get to a net zero carbon future. And you get to participate too, because we'll have live Q&A in just a little bit. Today, I'm really excited. We're going to be exploring the future of nuclear power in New York State with the man tasked with that rollout. My guest is Justin Driscoll. He's the CEO of the New York Power Authority, and I'm really proud to say also a longtime board member at Urban Green Council. Justin, welcome to Urban Green Live.
Well, thank you, John. Great to be with you. Looking forward to the discussion.
Great, thank you. So let's dive right into it, Justin, and let's start with the big picture first, just to kind of set the groundwork here for everybody. What is the role and responsibility for the New York Power Authority?
So we have several responsibilities, and some of them have been added to our statute over time. We started out with the construction of the Niagara Power Project, which is the third largest hydroelectric facility in the U.S. and sits right next to Niagara Falls. 2,700 megawatts of electricity generated there, clean hydropower. And also the St. Lawrence power plant that we share with Canada on the St. Lawrence River, the FDR power project on the St. Lawrence River. So we started with that authority. And then over time, added authority to do customer work, economic development work, and also we have a major role in the transmission system. We own and operate about a third of the bulk transmission system in the state, and our power lines move power from the North Country in Messina, Niagara, down here to the New York City area where the demand is greatest. So we own and operate about a third of the big grid, and we really serve as the backbone of the transmission system. We also have Economic Development Authority, where we provide low-cost hydropower to economic development customers to either attract businesses to New York or help New York retain businesses. Businesses make commitments to either jobs or capital investment. In exchange for that, we give them allocations of low-cost hydropower. And we also do customer energy efficiency work for governmental entities. So our biggest energy efficiency and supply customers are the City of New York and all of its public buildings, the Port Authority powering the airports, the MTA powering the subways. We're also helping them electrify their bus fleet. So it's really a fascinating organization with a lot of tools in its toolbox. So it's an exciting time to be here at the Power Authority.
Great, that's great background. You mentioned electrification. So help us understand, what part does the New York Power Authority play to assist decarbonization around New York State?
So big picture, we have our own hydropower assets. So we're looking to try to generate more hydropower out of those facilities. And our board authorized and committed us to spend over $1 billion to renovate and upgrade our hydropower facilities to make sure that they're here, for the next 60 years. And also maybe even eke out a little bit more power, making them more efficient so we can get more clean hydropower out of those facilities. As you may know, 2 years ago, the state budget included language that gave us authority to build utility scale renewable generation. So we're off and running with that exercise, and we've issued 2 plans now. The first containing about 3 gigawatts of projects that were in due diligence, and now another 3 gigawatts that we just added with an amendment to the plan just this past Tuesday at our board meeting. So we're playing a role on the generation side, but also, as I mentioned, the customer work that we do, we're helping our customers decarbonize. So critical work that we're doing as all of these governmental customers that I mentioned, and they include also municipalities all over the state, and SUNY, Office of General Services, the correctional facilities. All these customers have commitments to decarbonize, and so they come to us looking for innovative solutions to help them decarbonize. So that ranges from all kinds of things like sort of simply upgrades in lighting, HVAC upgrades, but now all forms of clean energy technologies. So solar and storage. We're exploring virtual power plants for some governmental buildings because they have large footprints that are that are sort of conducive to that sort of virtual power plant construct, and electric vehicle charging. We're second to Tesla now in New York State with the number of fast chargers that are deployed in our network and under our Evolve program.
That's awesome. You mentioned, your new authority to do renewable. What type are you pursuing in those projects you just talked about? Is it wind, solar, hydro? What's the?
So yeah, so there's a lot of wind in under review and in the portfolio now. A lot of solar. There's some wind, but most recently more projects on the solar on the storage side of the house, where we're looking at a lot of storage projects. It's all of the above. Some utility scale, and some more localized, more community based. And on the last point, we have an interesting sort of sub program within that new authority called the Beach program, and that is designed to provide bill credits to disadvantaged communities from some of the revenues from projects. So we have a number of REACH projects under review, and we just launched our first REACH project. So we'll work with the Department of Public Service to pass those bill credits on through the local utility, through the Con Edison, if you will, onto ratepayer bills in disadvantaged communities. So we're really excited about that. So it's big utility scale, but it's also smaller scale and designed to benefit individual communities. So it's really fascinating work. We've got a new group dedicated solely to that work here within the authority, and it's really producing benefits.
Great. So just a few weeks ago, Governor Hochul announced the construction of the first new nuclear plant for electrical generation in a generation here of New Yorkers. And she gave you the job to build it. What were your first thoughts when you knew this was coming?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that because I being in this role, we're very active around the country, so we know what other public power entities and other utilities are considering in terms of adding to their generation fleet, because we're all seeing increase in generation, increase in demand for electricity and the need for more generation. So we've been at this for about a year here within the Power Authority. I set up an emerging technologies task force, and the principal activity there was to explore developments in advanced nuclear around the world, really. Study who was already working on it, what were their experiences, and talking to our colleagues at other utilities and so forth. So we've been working on it, but the announcement itself, of course, we felt a lot of pride in being designated as the best entity to pursue this. And of course, we have some experience in nuclear previously, because in the mid-70s, during the energy crisis, we were asked to take over one of the units at Indian Point, and we ran that unit until 2000 when we sold it to Entergy, as well as the Fitzpatrick plant up on Lake Ontario. So we have in our history had some experience in this field, but we've been over the course of our history, we've been asked to step in and do big things for the state. So we feel like this is just another example of that, where just 10 years ago, almost now, we were asked to take over the Canal Corporation. So now we're the owner and operator of the Erie Canal, celebrating its 200th anniversary this year. We built the big hydro facilities. So built a big pump storage plant in the Catskill Mountains. So these sort of big things are kind of, as I say, in our DNA.
Ground us a little bit more. You mentioned some of it, but how many nuclear plants do we have in New York State already?
So we have 3 in operation right now. They're all owned by Constellation, and they provide roughly, anywhere between 20 to 25% of the electricity that we use on any given day. And I don't think I pointed out previously, but we also, and our hydropower facilities, provide 25%. So literally half of the generation that's required in New York State comes from either nuclear or primarily NYPA hydro and other renewables. And the other 50% is the fossil generation that we're trying to retire. and replace with clean resources.
Okay, so what does that nuclear technology look like today? Is it literally the same as those incumbent plants that you're talking about, or what's changed?
So there have been a lot of changes. It depends on what type of nuclear reactor, if you will, you're talking about. But there are a couple different technologies that are or pathways, if you will, that are being explored. One is what they're calling the small modular reactor path. And those are typically around 250 to 300 megawatts. There's a lot of work around the globe on trying to design those and get as many into service as possible. So in North America, I guess the furthest along on the SMR technology would be our neighbors to the north at Ontario Power Generation, or OPG. They're now in construction on an SMR. And they're also in a collaboration with the Tennessee Valley Authority studying technologies, and they both kind of landed on one technology, the BWRX 300 SMR technology. So they're typically smaller. The idea is to have one sort of consistent design, so that the modular in the SMR means, that you can build them the same way. So you've got the supply chain established across the board. You don't have different technologies with different supply chain needs, and you have a trained workforce that knows how to build that modular reactor. So that's sort of the end state where we're looking to go, but we're early in that development. Like I said, Ontario Power Gen is probably the furthest along in North America. And we have a close collaboration with them because we jointly operate the St. Lawrence facility with them. And so we'll be watching closely their progress, and they'll be sharing information with us along the way to help us move in that direction, if that's the path we're going to choose. The other pathway is what they call the AP1000. So that would be a larger unit. That would be like a 1 gigawatt unit. So you may recall the governor's announcement was the Power Authority should lead this effort by building at least a gigawatt of this new nuclear technology. But that could take a couple different forms. It could be one gigawatt unit. That would be, in all likelihood, an AP1000, because those have already been built. So lessons learned, costs are coming down at each, along the way and so forth. Or you could build several SMRs to get to that 1 gigawatt. The idea here is that we're looking to be a catalyst at the Power Authority. We want to lead the way with this first initiative here. And as we get through that successfully, we think there'll be potentially other development following us, because we are facing increased demand for electricity with transportation electrification, building electrification, this data center growth. We know just in New York already, we have 2 big chip manufacturers that one is in operation already, Global Foundries upstate, and the other, Micron, is coming to New York, and they require, significant amount of baseload generation for those plants. So we know that we're going to be facing the same increases in energy demand that other utilities are seeing around the country. For us, it's our electrification efforts coupled with these chip manufacturers, and just economic development, taking place around the state. And this, one big piece of this, of course, is to have enough electricity to be able to attract these companies here. And I can tell you in our economic development work that we've done historically here at the Power Authority, when businesses would come to us or come to Empire State Development, wondering, exploring whether they want to locate in New York State, they probably would ask first about, how educated is the workforce, what's the housing look like, taxes, all those things you'd think of. And then maybe 4th or 5th would be electricity availability. Now it's the number one question they ask. Do you have enough electricity for us to come here? Which is really interesting. That shift is a great example of what's going on, and what we're looking to solve for.
Those two pathways you just talked about, the SMR, the small module reactor versus the larger one, what are the benefits of both? Like what kind of decision tree do you go through looking at one versus the other?
Yeah, so I guess the fundamental thing would be the AP1000, is further along and has been built. Lessons learned there from that technology, and so the SMRs are earlier stage, somewhat more risk with the technologies that aren't as further advanced as the AP1000. So it's really a question of that, but it's also if you look at the map of New York State, potentially you might want to have additional generation in several areas of the state and not just have it concentrated in one place. Also, you might have transmission availability issues that would either cause you to want to build several plants or to build one plant. You can see how a scenario where you might build one plant because you've got a robust transmission system there, whereas maybe that's not the case. So these are all the kind of things that we'll be exploring, but it's very early in that in that process.
Right. So a big question on people's mind is why nuclear now? Aren't renewables like wind and solar less costly and easier to build?
They are, and we need everything. I think the governor at her Future of Energy in New York summit last year in September up in Syracuse made it very clear that we are all of the above. We need all of the above in order to be, successful from an economic development standpoint, in order to be able to, continue to be a leading economy. We think we need renewables, of course, and we are a big part of that effort already, not only with our own hydro, but with the work we're doing on our new renewables work. Nuclear is just adding to the energy mix. Of course, nuclear is baseload, and some companies want that 24/7 baseload. And if you're looking at 24/7 baseload, it's in all likelihood either gas or nuclear, and we're looking to get rid of the gas. And so nuclear is a clean resource that can serve a baseload function alongside those renewables.
And so, how will initiatives like nuclear contribute to the state's clean energy goals? What role is it going to play?
Well, so ideally, and sort of just alluded to it, but it enables the retirement of fossil. It continues to clean up our overall state grid. It serves as a driver of economic development, and many of the companies that we talk to that want to come to New York State, they want clean energy. So those are the companies that further your decarbonization efforts, because their corporate principles and priorities are focused on decarbonization. So to the extent that we can attract companies like that to the state, we'll be the better for it.
Got it. Thank you. One of the issues with nuclear is the waste, right? And so some environmentalists are worried and skeptical, especially about how you sustainably dispose that waste. How do you think about addressing that?
I mean, we're being a heavily regulated utility, both in operating critical infrastructure. We're very, very committed, and I think part of our success is the strength of our compliance in all of our activities, and this work will be no different. So obviously, this is another heavily regulated industry, and we'll be doing everything in our power, and I'm sure complying to the fullest, if not by 110%, with any kind of federal regulations around waste. But that's governed largely by federal law. But we'll certainly, as we do in our transmission and generation work, we'll really be leaning into whatever compliance obligations we have around that, and that certainly would be our commitment.
Are there different waste profile benefits for the SMR versus the AP1000?
Well, I mean, there's certainly the smaller units have certainly a different footprint, right? So there's that. There's also work being done on essentially recycling the fuel. So getting more out of each fuel supply that you load into the plant. So that's something that we would be looking to take advantage of, and that some of these advanced technologies could potentially provide for. So definitely that. And so there's less use of in some of the technologies. There's less use of water in some of the reactors, and so all that is sort of on the table, and we'll be looking at those characteristics, if you will, of the different technologies in how we go about selecting it. And we're going to do a solicitation probably early in 2026, looking for proposed technologies. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a solicitation for community interest in being a host community. We're going to issue something in the fall, probably by November 1, we'll get something out seeking community interest. We already know several communities have indicated interest in hosting facility. But we want to cast a very wide net, and we want to see who else might be interested. And so that'll be one of the first things we do. And then we'll do this technology solicitation. We'll be looking into and analyzing various technologies to determine what characteristics are best for whatever likely site, because there is a connectivity interplay between the site you select and potentially the technology that you use, and the size of the plant, of course, because because of the land characteristics and topography and so forth. So all those factors will be taken into consideration as we analyze the various technologies. And a lot of work's been done around the globe on that already.
Is this like you alluded to it just there, but where you put this plant, do you have to build new distribution and transmission, or are you looking to kind of like put it on the distribution highway, just plop it there and plug it in?
Yeah. So, because of the role we play on transmission, this is top of mind for us. I think that the way we think about it, the overall cost of the project could be affected and reduced by the amount of transmission that has to be built. The less transmission you need to build to accommodate the unit, the overall that would affect the overall cost of the project. So yeah, we'd be looking at transmission characteristics. Obviously, what communities are interested in hosting. As the governor said, this plant will only be built in a community that wants it. That wants the job creation and the economic development aspects of it.
For our audience, we will be opening up soon for audience questions. So I know some have come in, but take your time now to enter those. We'll get to those soon. Justin, let's stick with the community location. Everybody wants to know where it's going to be built. You've talked about that a little bit, but help us walk through what are the criteria and the considerations more for siting a plant.
Well, one obvious component would be, is there existing energy infrastructure already in place? And some have suggested that good locations are places where plants have been retired, for instance. So there's energy infrastructure already in place. Others have suggested that where you already have nuclear is a very good place to consider, because you already have community support and job creation there. So those are two certainly important factors that would lend to considering those locations.
And what's the actual process? Like you mentioned that communities you'll have this solicitation, but what's the procedure in the process with which how this will unfold?
So this is not a short process. So what we're going to start off by doing, and this work is already underway, is we're going to first and foremost make sure we've created the proper internal infrastructure in the organization here to support this work. We're looking to hire a senior vice president of nuclear, and that search is already underway. We're already interviewing candidates for that role, and we'll build out under that person's direction a team. We'll also, I'm sure, reach out and have some external support for a significant work like this. That's very, very common. But right now, the work is really being done within our innovation office. 3 years ago, I created a executive vice president for innovation here, and we have an entire innovation office that works on all emerging technologies. And this work has been housed there for the last year. So we're not starting from scratch. But that's going to be a key piece of how we get going here. And then I alluded to the community outreach solicitation that we'll do for community interest, followed in short order by one solicitation or more on technologies. And then we'll also be looking to see what interest there is in equity participation or financing structures. So this project will not be a NYPA only project. This will be a project that we'll do in all likelihood with partners. And just because of the scale of these types of projects. So that'll be coming along as well. And then all that work comes together. You select the design, you get the internal the team set up, you ascertain whether and who your partners are going to be, how the project is going to be financed, and then you pull all that together and you start to develop your license application for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which would follow all that work.
Next logical question is then how long does this take? So let's talk time frame. Like you just mentioned some of those milestones, but help us walk through when things you think will fall into place, and then ultimately when we're thinking something can be operational.
Yeah. I mean, on the operational, I mean, there's so many factors there coming into play. We know that the federal government is planning to accelerate and already has taken some steps through some of its executive orders and trying to accelerate some of these timelines. So, we're hopeful to be the beneficiaries of some of that streamlining. But in terms of, I think it's just too far out to talk about, an in-service project completion date. But this study work and the work leading up to a filing of a license application would probably take a couple of years. This preliminary work, part is setting up the structures, selecting the technology, all that feasibility work will probably take a couple of years. But again, who knows, how quickly we'll be able to pull that together and get an application through and approved at the NRC. We're hopeful that will be a more streamlined process.
And then you mentioned it earlier, but like, who do you think's doing nuclear best now? Like, where will you look to learn from precedent?
So we're going to. There are two likely candidates for that. One is I already mentioned Ontario Power Generation to our north. They actually have an SMR under construction, and that'll in all likelihood be the first SMR in operation in North America. I think they're targeting 2029 or 2030 for an in-service date there. So that we're going to be working closely with them and watching their progress along the way. The other place that we're going to learn from is what many people have read about the Vogtle plant, the 2 units that were built in Georgia that those were larger, all advanced technologies, but the larger sort of one gigawatt size units, and those were built during the pandemic, had significant cost overruns. A lot of lessons learned. Costs went down on the second unit that was built. They built number 3 and number 4. There were a lot of lessons learned and savings and reduction in costs on the second one, unit 4. But we'll certainly be looking at that experience and how they established their supply chain, how they established their workforce, because we haven't built nuclear here in quite some time. So we've got to train up a workforce, and we've got to establish a supply chain. Now, the good news is that that's been done successfully in Ontario, and we're already working on developing our own workforce initiative around this in partnership with others, and that'll be coming out in the near term as well.
Great. So I have one more question for Justin, and then we're going to move on to the audience questions. There's a lot of good ones coming in. Please keep them coming. So Justin, last question here for me is what should we expect next? Like where do we go from here?
I think the first thing that you'll see is just the announcement of our new head of nuclear will be coming soon. So stay tuned on that. And then you'll see next our solicitation for community interest. You'll also see some workforce development efforts that we're going to launch, and we're sort of building that out now in partnership with others. So that'll be coming as well, in all likelihood, in the fall. And then I think in Q1 of 2026, you'll see those more substantive solicitations around potential technologies, and so those are the the steps that you'll be seeing in the near term.
Great, thank you. So let's turn to some audience questions here. I've been scrolling through them. Please keep them coming in. One that's a good question is there a longer term goal for the nuclear portion of New York State's mix?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Obviously we're going to be facing the increased demand for electricity. The projections around that, but so it's kind of a moving target, because our total demand, if you will, is going to be going up. And that's going to have to be met with renewables and nuclear, and hopefully maybe even some additional hydro. But we're looking to catalyze further development. I guess I would say I wouldn't think that our 1 gigawatt project would be the last one to get built. We're hoping that incentivizes others to come along with us or behind us. And take advantage of either the supply chain that we've established, the workforce we've established, a successful technology identification, and that potentially there might be more units built. But I guess it's too early to tell in terms of what our overall demand for electricity will ultimately be. And then also the other side of the coin here is how much fossil is being retired, and the impact of that, and does offshore wind, obviously offshore wind is facing, some difficult opposition in Washington. And so some of the goals around that have at least been, I would say, postponed, if you will. But to the extent that offshore wind comes back and plays the role that we had originally identified it for, which was, as you probably know, up to 9 gigawatts of offshore wind in our plan. And we've got one project in flight now, probably put 1 gigawatt or more on the system. But if that participation through offshore wind were to increase, and we had significant inroads in retiring our fossil generation, you can see a place for more nuclear to provide that clean energy benefit to the overall system.
You mentioned demand just now and earlier. Help us just visualize that. Is this like some hockey stick thing that we're seeing here? Is it new? And how do you think about demand?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and you know better than anyone that we're also counting on energy efficiency, right, to play a role in keeping that demand, as low as possible, if you will, on the overall system. We also have the build out of distributed generation. There's a lot of rooftop solar around the state now that's playing a significant role, particularly on Long Island. On Long Island, they have a significant contribution from rooftop solar, meeting their overall demand. Some utilities talk about a doubling of their demand, over the next 20, 30 years. I don't think that we're there in our state projection. It's probably too early to tell, but it's definitely going up. Just in looking at the applications that have been filed at the NISO, the New York Independent System Operator, for potential interconnection requests from data centers and other what they call large loads. These companies are coming, and they all have significant demands. For instance, typical data center maybe 10 years ago might have been 20 or 30 megawatts. Now they come in and they want 200 or 300. Right? That's the size of a power plant. That's the size of one power plant. So I mean, you can just imagine. Not all those will come and get built, but we're definitely seeing it.
A couple questions here around financing. The crux of it is around funding. What funding mechanisms would be used for a project like this?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I mean, and again, we're early in this, and like I said, we know that we're not going to be doing this alone at the Power Authority, but we're hoping to take advantage of federal support. That seems to be a priority and something that's increasing in Washington. So we hope to have at least a component of some federal support for the project. We also are hopeful that we will have partners, equity partners, investors. We also know that around the country and around the world that some of the big users, the big hyperscalers, as they call them, some of them are actually taking an interest in getting projects built. So there could be a potential there. Potential off-takers, if you will, companies that want the power from the plant. So that's kind of how we're looking at it. But it's really early in that. We'll have to see what comes out of our solicitations before really having any concrete information around that. But I think it's certainly safe to say that we're going to be exploring all potential avenues of financial support so that we can get this project built. And we have all this other work going on too. Right, we're building big transmission projects that are, $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion projects. We're doing all this renewables work, which obviously also requires financial capacity from the authority. We're supporting the Canal Corporation in its operation. So we're doing a lot, and so we're going to have to make sure that that this work, is fits within our capacity, and so that's a top of mind consideration and something we're going to be working on over the next 6 months.
Questions about Indian Point. Is there any discussion about reopening Indian Point as part of this evaluation?
No, that has never come up. The governor's been pretty clear, that and this, I guess, would raise the question about where you draw the line for what's upstate and what's downstate. But she, it's always a topic of debate. But she said that this is going to be built upstate, and I view that as not in the Hudson Valley. So that does not come up.
Any consideration here? A lot of questions on risk and mitigation, but one of them here stands out is on insurance for these plants. There's been an issue before for that. Has that come up, or how have you seen other communities address how these are insured?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, one of the things I can only say that my only and again, like it's early in this analysis, but one of the things that we're following very closely is discussions in Washington around some kind of potential insurance backstop for cost overruns. That's an insurance component that's under a lot of discussion, given the BOGO experience in Georgia. And I think there's actually a bill that's been introduced called like the Advance Act or something that I think that's what it's called, that calls for some form of federal backstop insurance against cost overruns, because that's one of the things that's been a bit of an impediment is, who shares the construction risk and the risk of cost overruns, and how do you get comfort around that so investment capital can come in. On the question of just ensuring the plant's day-to-day operations, I think that's something that we're going to have to obviously get our arms around, but we have not, addressed that yet.
Yeah. here's a question: is it either or? Could it be both? On the small modular reactors versus the larger plant. Are you only going to consider one of them, or could the process actually lead to two different solutions, two different places?
I guess it could lead to two because we could, depending upon the partnership participation, you could see a scenario where a larger unit got built, and also several SMRs were built as well. So the governor's direction was at least 1 gigawatt. So we could theoretically go above that, and I guess that would be dependent upon, what percentage of participation in the project by the power authority, who are we developing the project with. So it's not something we would rule out, split that way.
Going through here, I saw one. So what do you expect community outreach to look like as part of the site selection process?
Yeah, I guess that'll vary from community to community. I think that what would be the first thing we would see would be the response to our solicitation, which might say, either here's an abandoned power plant, or here's a parcel of property that we think would be ideal. Here's what our workforce looks like. Here's what our access to various, supplies or water might be, transmission, those kind of characteristics might come out of a response to our solicitation. So, and then obviously following that would be, heavy due diligence on what that really looked like, and whether we agreed with the optimism that the community might have about the potential for the site. So that would obviously have to be thoroughly, vetted by us.
You mentioned workforce, and there's a few questions related to workforce here, and they're kind of in two different areas. Do we have a skills gap that we have to overcome here, both within NYPA for your multi-year evaluation of this, and then longer term from a build and operation standpoint? How do we think about workforce development?
Yeah, so I think first the internal will be fine internally, both with a combination of existing resources, new hires, and outside consultancy help. So that work I will not be an issue. I think on the actual workforce for the development of the plant, like as I said earlier, we haven't built nuclear here in many years, and we don't have a lot of programs around the state that are designed to produce that workforce. And so we're going to be working with SUNY and other academic institutions and labor organizations to make sure that we're identifying the skills that are going to be required, and making sure that programs are being developed, potentially with NYPA support or state support, to get those programs launched, to be able to produce the workforce that we're going to need. Because there is a gap there, just by virtue of the fact that the plant in Georgia, I think, was the first one that's been built in over 30 years. They were able to establish the workforce for those two major plant constructions, and Ontario Power Generation has been able to do the same with their project. They're already operating nuclear, so they had a bit of an advantage in terms of developing that work and identifying that workforce. But it's an issue that needs to be addressed right away.
A question on ownership and operation. Have you thought through who actually is going to own the plant and operate it?
No, not yet. Not yet. That comes up a lot. I mean, there are all different types of models there. We could lead the construction and transfer it to a new owner. We could decide to own it and operate it ourselves. We could do it jointly with another operator. There are any number of ways that this might end up, and that'll all come out of some of the outreach that we do, and the structuring analysis we do, and what's the most prudent way to get the plant built and get it into operation, and what model is going to I guess, incentivize others potentially to follow our lead and build additional plants.
And I think just to clarify, you mentioned the 3 nuclear plants operating in New York right now. They're independently owned by a separate entity, right?
Correct. A public company constellation.
Yeah. Right. Right. Question on the SMR. Do you foresee standalone build-outs like for sole company locations, like you talked about some big chip companies? Like, would there be a dedicated unit, or would this be more ones that are connected to the grid?
Yeah, I think it's not something that we're thinking about, a dedicated unit. I know there are a couple of examples of that in recent announcements that have been made by the big hyperscalers that are following that model. That's not how we're looking at it right now. I mean, that there could be that potential for that down the road, but that's not how we're advancing this work.
Okay. Here's a question that's not fair for you, but I'll answer. I'm trying to find it. It was a good question worth asking here. It was about, so how would this affect the local 197 carbon emission rates? And that process is a DOB process. So our grid coefficient and emission rates are set through 2030, and DOB will have a process to look at that beyond 2030, and will factor where the grid is and where it's going from that perspective. So anything else you want to add to that, Justin?
No, I think you're the subject matter expert on that. I'll defer to you.
The 1 gigawatt plant that you talked about, is that literally one plant, or could it be like, is that one installation has 2 smaller plants? Like physically, what is it?
Usually one plant. I mean, the AP 1000, the 1 gigawatt plant would be one. That would be one facility.
Got it. Lots of questions on nuclear waste. Where is it going? How's it being stored? What are the protocols today for that?
Well, most plants that have waste are storing it on site in these casks. That's the proven technology. There is a federal facility that was designed that has not taken on any of the waste yet. So we'll see if that changes. But right now, waste is stored. The safe technology around that is these casks that are designed to store it on site.
Okay. Questions also related to life of the plants. Like, once you get this building, what do we think the expected life of these plants are these days for the new ones?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. I think probably hoping for 50 plus years. One would think. I don't have a concrete answer to that. I think it's dependent on what kind of plant technology you have and all that. But these are long-term commitments and long-term contributors to the system that justify the cost.
Scrolling through the questions here. Have you gotten down to the point of thinking what types of the level of fuels that you'll use?
No.
How is that part of the specification process?
Yeah, a lot of the technologies use these different technologies use all different types of fuels. So it would depend on what we select, and also depend on the size of the reactor. We haven't talked at all about the micro reactors, which are those smaller, like 40 or 50 megawatt and less reactors that there are a couple companies with projects in flight, one in Wyoming and one in Texas, as I recall. But those are smaller, and those are the kind of technologies that some think would be able to be sited at an actual factory or large business. Those are not what we're considering, because those are that they do not provide the grid benefit that we're looking for.
Got it. And then what about battery integration? Does that work with nuclear, or how do you think about batteries and nuclear?
I think probably more conducive to renewable generation, because the primary advantage to nuclear is that 24/7 baseload capacity. So they're running all the time.
Got it. And then just questions to talk a little bit more about the renewables that you're working on. I know this is a program on nuclear, but you mentioned that you are doing build outs of renewables. What's the update on those?
So we as I mentioned, our initial strategic plan back in January, that was a result of a year-long process and public hearings and all, identified in that first batch about 3 gigawatts of mostly solar around the state, some utility scale, some smaller. We just acquired our first project from a developer, interested in a project that was already sort of further along. So we're going at it in two ways: identifying what we call greenfield sites for a NIPA project from the ground up, where we identify a parcel of land and we build the project from scratch from the start. And then we have other what we call co-developed projects, and those could be projects that we're starting now, but in partnership with a developer. But interestingly, we're also looking at projects that were a little further along, a little more advanced, so we can get projects in service sooner. So we've entered into agreements where we've taken an interest in a project that, for instance, already had a position in the interconnection queue at the NISO, which is a process that takes some time. So trying to get ahead and put more projects in service faster through those co-developed projects. But it'll be both greenfield, NIPA owned, and co-developed. We've already got projects underway in both categories. And then back to the REACH program, have some smaller projects that will throw out benefits to disadvantaged communities through bill credits.
Right. Well, Justin, you've been in the hot seat for a while here. We really appreciate it. Is there anything we didn't ask you that we should have, or that you want to tell us?
No, I think we covered. You did a great job of covering all aspects of it in a short period of time. So yeah, it's been my pleasure. It's always good to see you and the Urban Green team.
Well, great. Well, Justin, I really want to thank you for the informative discussion. Thank you for responding so quickly. I think within 24 hours of the governor's announcement, Justin agreed to do this program. Might be a record for us. So speaks to your dedication and your commitment, and also your support of Urban Green. And we really appreciate that, Justin. So thank you, and thank you for spending time with us today.